Coming up next, a truly remarkable story of a number one rock song from 1984 that was written while on the toilet. Seriously. This song brought one of the greatest progressive rock bands together again after years of being broken up. The legendary singer of this song and the record man who put it all together, both of them tell the story next on Professor of Rock. It's a can't miss. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you are a massive fan of all things rock, pop, soul, blues, new wave, metal, this channel was made for you, everything. Just subscribe below for our daily content so you never miss out. And make sure to check out our new merch, including our brand new Vintage Years collection, where we have the big four of a classic year in music. We celebrate them on our merch. Check these designs out. Amazing. I love this artist. We also have exclusive content on our Patreon. Both of these things help us to keep the music alive. More interviews, more videos. So it's time for another edition of our show, Revelations, where featured artists take us for a deep dive beyond their greatest songs and their greatest albums. This is going to be a good one. One of the biggest songs of 1984, the number one rock song, Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes. Originated in 1979 from South African musician, singer-songwriter, and producer Trevor Rabin. The song came to him while he was on the toilet. That's true. Apparently, he wrote the whole thing from beginning to end right there. Rabin then recorded his ideas on a tape using some home equipment, including a 4-track tape machine. One of the demos consisted of the main verse and chorus riff that he played on an acoustic guitar while he sang along. And then he did a bigger version. He added drums and keyboards and a bunch of lyrics. This was in 1980. So for the full version, Trevor Rabin used the first and second tracks to record the instruments and vocals before mixing the song onto the third. He said, and I quote, "You would be making decisions based on what was coming, and sometimes those decisions would be wrong, but you couldn't undo them. One of the things, a happy accident, was that all of the brass stabs and those weird things that happen on the record, they were just a product of what happened with the demo." End of quote. Very cool. One of my favorite songs from the 80s. Well, up next, we have the story of how Trevor Rabin and this incredible song changed everything. How it brought a broken up Yes together again, with exclusive takes from the man who masterfully sang the number one hit, Jon Anderson, the great Jon Anderson, legend, and record man Phil Carson, another one, who helped put it together. It's a fascinating story behind one of, again, my favorite songs of the 80s, one of the best rock songs, period, of that time. Now, as we go into these interviews, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. They're the brand of glasses I'm wearing right now. Go take a look at Zenni.com, where you can design your own glasses and do virtual try-ons. It's where you can see how the eyewear is going to look on you, make sure it matches your face with Zenni's virtual mirror feature. And while you're at it, you can add cool features like blue blocks, which they protect your eyes from digital blue light. It's been a game changer for me. Check it out today. Here's the story of Owner of a Lonely Heart. Let's talk about the incomparable masterpiece, Owner of a Lonely Heart. First song I ever heard of Yes that got me into the band. So many memories with that song. Like many Yes compositions, just the song has such an interesting journey before it was recorded and mastered for 90125. Ultimately, of course, becoming a number one smash on the Billboard Hot 100. Maybe my favorite story demonstrating your wizardry as a navigator is the tale of how you resurrected Yes, culminated by the emergence of their biggest hit, Owner of a Lonely Heart, for one of the best songs of that year, in my opinion.
I went back a long way with Yes, just to sort of give a bit of background to that. Yes was signed by my boss, Ahmet Ertegun, to Atlantic, but they were let go after the first album. And I re-signed them and made the Yes album which most Americans think is the first Yes album, but it was actually the third. Anyway, I had this great relationship with the band. We built up from there. I brought in Eddie Offord, who I'd worked with before as a producer. I brought in Roger Dean later to do all the cover art. So I had all that background of belief.
Trevor Raven, extraordinarily talented, but was relatively unknown at that time. He'd been a member of the South African act Rabbit. As I understand, he worked on solo material after Rabbit. Wasn't getting any serious looks from the labels. Put out a couple of solo records when he moved to London that didn't get any traction. Tell me about how that came together.
Trevor was introduced to me via Mutt Langer, who is also South African. And I got to hear his demo of Owner of a Lonely Heart. Which is totally written by him at that moment. And I thought he was an awesome talent. Trevor Horn got to hear him as well. And we decided to put him in Yes, which was, when I say Yes at the time, we weren't even calling it Yes. It was a group with Chris Squire and Alan White principally, and we were going to call it Cinema. We had a bunch of songs and so forth. I heard this song, and I called up Squire and Trevor Horn and Alan. I said, "Listen, man, this song's just too good. We got to get this guy in here, and we got to call it Yes, and we got to get Jon Anderson back, all in one." I actually financed the first few recordings myself, and Tony Kaye and Trevor Rabin were living at my house. And we got a few tracks done, and then I actually took it to Ahmet, who happened to be visiting in Paris, and I played in a cassette, and the rest was history. He said, screw it, just sign them. We've got to get this out. And with him behind it, I couldn't go wrong, you see. No matter how many obstacles were thrown in my way, but there were a few.
Well, Trevor, as I understand, was in serious discussion about joining Asia at the time as well.
I understand that to be true, yeah. So, it was better for him to be in Yes because obviously Steve Howe was in Asia, and there was a clash between Steve and Trevor at an audition, and I don't know, I think it may have been for Asia actually. And Trevor is a consummate musician. He is stunningly good. And he had rehearsed whatever they'd thrown at him and he was ready. And he tells me, he said to Steve, "Well, what shall I play on the next one?" And Steve said, "How about nothing?" And that cold response worked to my advantage. And then we got Trevor, and it was a huge success. Wonderful player. Love him. So I was able to track down Jon Anderson via his roadie, because I kept a pretty extensive network of road crew back in those days, because they're the guys that tend to know what's going on before anybody else. So I called Jon's roadie. He said, "Well, funny you should say that. Jon's waiting." This is 1983, no cell phones, okay? Jon's waiting for me. He's in a phone box on the King's Road in Chelsea, waiting for me to call him. So I said, "Okay, hold the phone. I'm going to call him first." So Jon and I had a good relationship.
Well, I was in south of France writing music about the fairy kingdom, and I just met this 90-year-old incredible artist called Marc Chagall. I don't know if you know Marc Chagall. Incredible man. And so I wrote music about him. So I was busy doing that and happily doing that.
And Jon was an amazing talent, but he decided he didn't want to do this project with Alan and Chris. But in the phone box on King's Road, I managed to talk him into giving it a go. And he heard the song, and he put a little bit of his own magic on it. And we went to record, and that's how Yes was reborn for 90125. And as you say, it was incredible success, and it was wonderful to be a part of it.
I went to London, and Chris called me up and said, "I want to play some music." And I said, "Oh, good. What have you been doing?" So I've been working with Trevor Horn. And I knew Trevor Horn's music from the guy who used to manage Sex Pistols, Malcolm McLaren, had released an album called Duck Rock, which was fantastic in terms of production. They used a lot of very typical New York street-wise energy about the music, and what people talking on the radio and skip dancing, and it was seriously a great album. So I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So I met with Chris, and he drove over to where I lived in London, and I got in his car, and he played me these tapes, and I just went, that's him. That's Trevor Horn. That's that energy. Yeah, he said me and Trevor Rabin and Alan White, and it really got going. We're going to be called Cinema. I said, oh, this is great stuff, man. Really good. And then he turned around and said, would you be interested in singing some of the songs?
Well, this was tough because, as I understand, Anderson's relationship with Squires and White was strained over the way that things ended with his tenure with Yes, and for all intents and purposes, Yes as a functioning band had broken up. How did you convince Jon to come back to Yes? I've always been curious.
Well, I guess with the quality of the songs that were there, not only particularly Under the Lonely Heart, but Chris and Alan together with Trevor Horn have really getting some very interesting stuff together. So we made it happen. And it's all about what an A&R guy is supposed to do. I mean, people seem to forget what that stands for. It's artists and repertoire. So you've got to kind of know about the artists you're dealing with, understand the chemistry, if it's a band, between them all, and understand what are the right songs for them to do. Even if it's a band that writes its own stuff, a record company guy who knows what he's doing is a help. I mean, I always had a statement I make to any band I was dealing with saying, I have the right to put my 10 cents into what you're doing. You have the right to tell me to f*** off. And that's how I worked,
And I said, yeah, because All of the Lonely Hearts are here. The chorus is, the song is not going anywhere, because what the song's doing, you got this da 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 da. And the vocals, na 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 na. Oh, it's too slight. You got to do it very attacking, to go with the band. Da da, move it, da 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 da.
So the Andersons' distinctive voice and revered musicianship of White, Squires, and Kay, it didn't make sense to call the band anything but Yes. You were saying Cinema. How did they decide on Yes? Going back to Yes?
I told them, it was as simple as that. It had to be Yes. And fortunately, they got it. They believed me. I mean, I'm not that belligerent. Well, maybe I am. I don't know. It had to be called Yes, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. Let us play the Yes catalogue when we were out touring, and it revived the whole Yes catalogue too. So it was an absolute win-win for everybody.
So I joined the band, and the next day I was in the studio with Trevor.
How did Trevor Horn become the producer?
Well, Squire got him involved. Very good move too.
And I was saying, your vocals got to come out of nowhere. Da da da, da 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 da, da 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 da, da da da. Running along. So me and Trevor wrote the first part of the first verse, basically the first verse together, and then he said, "Look, I'm going to leave it to you. You know what you're doing."
As I understand it, Jon and Chris added and refined the verses a bit, and the song was polished up to record because the demo. What was the demo like when you heard it? Was it rough, or was it pretty much there?
Would you mean Trevor's demo?
Yes.
Yes, it was pretty much there. I mean, Jon changed a few lyrics here and there, and, got a writing credit, of course. So it was all part of making it happen. Trevor could, I suppose, not easily, but could have said, wait a minute, it's my song from start to finish. I wrote the lyrics, I wrote the melody, but he was wise enough, as well as being a brilliant musician, to spread the love around a little. And, Jon's slightly different approach to lyrics no doubt helped with the Yes fans. So I'm not going to in any way denigrate what his contribution was, but the reality is it was an intact song before he got hold of it. But if Trevor hadn't acquiesced to that, I don't know if Jon would have joined. It's as simple as that. It became a collaborative work, and it became a band. I mean, we had a lot of fun on the road with Yes for 2 or 3 years after that. So it was a big deal.
So Trevor Horn was there, and I just went ahead and next verse, move yourself, shape yourself, or whatever I'm saying. Prove yourself. You are the move you make. Take your chances. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be owner of a lonely heart. That was the concept of the song, that if you don't get right together, you're going to be owner of a lonely heart. But it's much better than a broken heart, sort of thing. So I wanted to make sure that the lyric meant something rather than a sad love song or something like that, Sooner or later, each conclusion will decide the heavy, at a certain point, you can dance in amongst the riff, I always loved singing it. I even just did it on tour with 1,000 Hands Band. And we opened up the show with that. If we're going to start with anything, let's start with a song they all know. Come on. And then we did Yours Is No Disgrace. Come on, they know this stuff. Now we'll give them some new stuff. But Owner was definitely a classic. I always called it La Bamba. It reminded me of La Bamba. Owner of a lonely heart. La Bamba. They're all based around something, these songs.
Owner of a Lonely Heart was primarily composed by Trevor Rabin, but the verses were kind of a mess. What was interesting is I always heard that he wrote it on the toilet.
Well, he probably wrote the chorus on the toilet with his guitar. There was no song. There was no actual melody in the verse until me and him got together and did it. And then I just polished it, made it become what I wanted to sing. Even the lift up was, there was nothing there. So I just got on with recreating the verses and the bridge. And that's where I was going. And because I've been hired to do it, Trevor Horn, who joined Yes, and be part of the downfall of, not that it wasn't his fault. So the idea was, it was a great producer, you see. And so we got on with making the album. Owner was the kingpin. And the record company knew it, and they were going to spend a fortune to make it a hit. Because in those days, payola was big, probably these days still is. You have record companies giving money and cocaine and call girls to DJs, and this was big, big business, But I enjoyed it so much because of one thing. Before we went on tour, I went to see Spinal Tap.
This is Spinal Tap.
That's all I remember. Of course, we were number one everywhere, and everybody loved us. All the record company people loved us, and everybody loved us. But it was Spinal Tap. And it didn't matter. It was just funny.
It had such a progression because Red Trevor Raven had taken it to Clive Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially rejected the song.
Yeah. They rejected it,
He said, it's too strange. My understanding is that Trevor had shopped his demos around, including presenting it to Clive Davis of Arista, who passed on Owner of a Lonely Heart because he thought it was too weird.
Well, it was out there. If you think about the sounds that Trevor was getting. But I thought it was a smash, and thank God I was right. It did very well. Very, very well.
When you were presented Owner of a Lonely Heart, though, Trevor Horn loved the melody and the chorus. I was always interested in the stories behind the songs. I know that you came up with Move Yourself, You Always Live Your Life, and then Never Thinking of the Future. Tell me about what you remember about recording it, because that vocal, and there's so many nuances using synthesizers and the different things that Yes had never really done.
Yeah, samples. Well, I just loved the track. And I just went in and I sang it in 2 sessions, and that was it. I wrote the lyrics, sang it, wrote the lyrics, sang it, wrote the lyrics, sang it, went the following day and sang it, and that was it. It just seemed like a natural for me.
Trevor Horn's ideas about programming with the digital synthesizer weren't really well received by the band because they'd never used synthesized, computerized programming to craft a song. I read somewhere that's the first rock song to use a sample.
Yeah, but he'd actually done it with Malcolm McLaren's album and a band I can never remember the name. There was no singer in the band. By the time all that equipment started to pile into recording, I think what happened to me is that music, from my state of mind, got very lost in trying to find the right sound. I went to the studio to do work on Big Generator in the studio with a silver box of machine, trying to get a drum groove going, you know? And I went outside and I looked at Alan White and I said, "What are you doing in there? You got the best rock drummer I know." And they go, John, leave them to it. It's okay. They want to play on that drum machine. Okay. But I can't take it, you know? So we all went to Air Studios on Saturday and recorded Rhythm of Love, which was a great track. Everybody lives and learns, that's for sure. But I lived and learned that you can't put a square peg in a round hole.
Well, Horn and various Yes members, I understand, argued in the studio over a lot of aspects of the record, such as the sound of the drums and getting Alan White to use Fairlight, for example. And the whole project could have easily gone off the rails many times, but that's another invaluable role that you feel, kind of balancing those egos and enormous talent, being the liaison to make sure that things keep moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, Yes is a band I was really closely involved in, from around the time of Time and a Word right through to the end of it. And I actually signed Yes 3 times. Now I come to think of it, I signed them once when Atlantic let them go. I signed them again to get 90125, and I signed them again when I had Victory Music with another version of Yes. So that's a band I loved, and we had always had a great relationship.
So we did that project, did that tour, and then I decided to do ABWH because I had a feeling that I wanted to do an album which would sound like Yes to me. It wouldn't be Yes, but it would sound like Yes because Steve, Bill, Rick, and myself in the band. So I couldn't go wrong. You know? And I loved that album, and the tour was wonderful.
Well, one last thing I want to ask is on Owner of a Lonely Heart, when the video came out on MTV, that was such an amazing music video. What do you remember about the music videos? This is right in the heyday of MTV.
I remember MTV starting and realizing that obviously this is the future of watching music, you know. And so we had Owner of a Lonely Heart, and they said, we got to do a video. And they employed 2 guys that I knew. They'd done some great artwork for Pink Floyd. They did The Cow.
Storm Thorgerson.
Yeah. And anyway, they become video makers, and they wanted to take over. And then they were going to film us on a roof in straight suits and jackets and everything. And walk towards the camera. So we just followed instructions, you know, and then we were going to turn into eagles and snakes and, you know. Okay, yes, we should do this, you know. And the strange thing about MTV is that over a period of time, they became so powerful I remember when we were doing Going for the One, we did another video, which was a great video. We were all coming up and down like that. Dun, dun. You remember that one? We were flat. That was amazing. But they didn't like it too much. But they played it a bit. And then we got into Big Generator, and we did this 150 grand. And they, I'm going to play that. I don't care who you were 10 minutes ago, but we don't play this crap, you know, sort of thing. So that really spoiled the whole game of MTV loves us. No, they're into the money.
The album was being made. The new wave movement was in full swing at that moment. Was that a conscious part of the recording process to give Owner of a Lonely Heart kind of a new wave edge to it?
Yeah, you know, I put that almost completely down to Trevor. He really understood that. I mean, the Buggles was in new age rock music, let's face it. And he was responsible for that. So, yeah, that's how it came to be. And don't forget, Trevor had been in Yes for 15 minutes at one point. He actually understood how to take that great classic repertoire and image and ability and add that new element to it. And that's why that record was so big.
I think more than ever, I'm very grateful that I love what I do. I'm very grateful that I'm into creating adventurous music. I'm very grateful that I'm healthy. I'm very grateful that I'm in love with my wife. And as they say, happy wife, happy life. And I'm very grateful that I found a spiritual connection with the divine, which is why we live. We only live for one thing and one thing alone, and that is to find our connection to the divine that surrounds us all. Ta-da!
Wow. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment below about this earth-shattering song from one of the best years of music ever, 1984, my favorite year. What are your memories of hearing it and experiencing it? If you really want to celebrate the greatness that was 1984, again, check out our 1984 Vintage Years Collection merch, all dedicated to the greatest year in pop music. If you like our content, we do invite you to be a full-time part of our channel. Make sure to subscribe below and check out our Patreon for even more content. The goal is to keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.